So weird. It's like the fake news is getting slaughtered left, right, and center. Now Rachel Maddow just wants to jump off a cliff. she's just making it easy. She's like, you don't have to fire me. I'll just commit career suicide by coming to the rescue of my good friend, Joy Reid. What's up? This is Kaye Saves the Republic. I got to tell you, I knew that eventually, they always say what goes around comes around. I get all that. Karma, blah, blah, blah. I knew eventually that the fake news media would have a come to Jesus kind of meeting. I knew that there would be a retribution in the media, but I didn't realize it would be this quick. I didn't realize it would be this massive. I didn't realize it would be this kind. I mean, you want to talk about doging things. The media is doging itself. I mean, the waste, the fraud, the abuse in the government is one thing, but the waste, the fraud, and the abuse in the media is outstanding. And there are people that are in charge of these large corporations, in charge of these large conglomerates, and they've had enough, man. They're like, we're not going to do it anymore. We're not going to do it. There's no way. This is not how we run things. We're not going to make any money with these people. And they're getting rid of them left, right, and center. And Joy Reid is the latest. And I got to tell you, what Rachel Maddow did yesterday, it takes a great big cojones. And I know, I've known some dudes, with some great big cojones, but no dudes have bigger ones than Rachel Maddow. Because what she did yesterday on her show, first of all, she only works like once a week, right? She used to be on every night and they paid her millions of dollars. And this takes, like I said, this takes a big pair, big brass ones. After like a few years of dominating the ratings, I guess, or doing really well on the network, Rachel Maddow went to them and said, hey, I know I'm the top dog around here. I know I'm the prime breadwinner. I know I'm the one that keeps the lights on for everyone else. But you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to work less and get paid more. I'm not complaining about that. I, too, would like to work less and get paid more. I understand that that's the desire of pretty much a lot of folks, to work less and get paid more. And I'm not just talking about government officials. I'm not just talking about those people in government that refuse to answer Elon Musk's email, hey, what did you do last week? No, I'm talking about a lot of everyday, average, ordinary Americans. Work less, get paid more, enjoy the time off with your family. I get it. And that's what Rachel Maddow wanted to do. And MSNBC let her do it. So now she rolls into work like once a week, I think. And yesterday on her one day at work, she used her limited time on MSNBC to call her bosses and the executives at the network racists, which I have to tell you, that is a bold move. When I used to work for people, I called them a lot of names, mostly not to their face. But that was a bold move of Rachel Maddow to get on there and call the boss and all the executive bunch of racists. You're all that's basically what she did. She was mad about Joy Reid, who, as we've told you before, was fired. In fact, Joy Reid yesterday, I guess because she no longer has a show, she did what, well, all of us who don't have shows do anymore. She set up a camera and a microphone in her house, and she started a broadcast on the internet. And I'm not faulting her for that. That would be hypocritical of me. I'm not faulting her for that. That would be hypocritical of me. I love that Joy Reid says, okay, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to take matters in my own hands. What I don't like was her messaging, or the fact that she was blubbering all over the place, or the fact that she was, she was unapologetic for her bolstering and support of terrorists. That's what I'm not a big fan of. Anyway, here's what she said yesterday on her impromptu live stream from Casa de Joy.
My show had value. And that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV. And this is kind of like me on TV, so I apologize. And then it mattered. I see Karen is there, and she's been texting me as well. And
I imagine there's a lot of Karens that watch Joy Reid. I'm sorry, I couldn't help. Hey, sorry. She apologizes for crying on TV. Of all the things she needs to apologize for, crying on TV is the least of it. But anyway, let's resume.
I will just say is that in the end, thank you. Where I land is that the moment of guilt that I felt, that I went hard on so many issues, whether it was the Black Lives Matter issues of a young baby or a mom or a dad that was killed, or when we opened up people's eyes to the fact that Asian Americans were being targeted and not just Black folks, or went hard for immigrants who've done nothing but come to this country like my parents did and try to make a life and defended them, or whether we've talked about what the president is doing that is subversive to the Constitution, that is injurious to our liberty, defending books that people find inconvenient, that Nicole Hannah-Jones put into our spirit, that we need to understand 1619 as the real founding of this country, whether it's talking about any of these issues, and yes, whether it's talking about Gaza and the fact that we as the American people have a right to object, to little babies being bombed. And where I come down on that is I'm not sorry. I am not sorry that I stood up for those things.
All right, so she's not sorry that she stood up for terrorism and race baiting and all your divisiveness and attacking Americans and hateful speech and all these other. She's not apologizing for any of that. She is not sorry. She went hard on supporting Hamas and their invasion of Israel and the killing of innocent Israelis and Jews and Americans and Europeans, oh my, and the kidnapping of young children who were later slaughtered as hostages. She's fine with all that. She is not going to apologize. She's not going to apologize for any of that. But she will sit at her house and cry, which again, I don't get the whole crying thing. I mean, it's weird to me. Like I got fired. I didn't cry on camera. In the bathroom, but not on camera. I mean, there's a time and a place for all those kinds of things. And look, Joy Reid, she was not adding any value. I mean, she talked about how my show had value. Her show had value to, I mean, I don't know, the Black Panther Party? Who did her show have value to? All she did from day one was talk about how white people were bad and oppressive, and Donald Trump was evil and Hitler, and he was some kind of just idol for white supremacy. It was, in fact, there's been multiple compilations. I have a couple of. Here's one. This one gives you a good idea of who Joy Reid was.
The race lady. Why would they call me that? Is this really about me fixating on race, or is it about you fixating on race?
But Donald Trump wants to never let Black and brown folk up off the mat. Evident what they mean by DEI, right? Why not just say what you mean? You can't stand Black people. We get it. You've been heard.
Are you committed to naming a Black woman as your vice presidential running mate?
They wanted to go after the brown people too, because of course that is their other target. It's not fashionable to be openly racist anymore in America, unlike what they call the good old days. Only the white Christian men may have the things. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas. If you are Black plus anything else, you are Black.
Violent white nationalism that today threatens our national security.
Similarities to what happened in Germany and what's happening now in America are just undeniable.
Donald Trump is acting like a Nazi, talking like a Nazi, and now posting like a Nazi.
Like Trump, Hitler was also viewed as a clown, a goon who could be kept in line after a 4-year break to learn to accurately quote Adolf Hitler. Right-wingers were saying, get in the oven anytime you made any benign comment on Twitter. Elon Musk, I guess he misses the old South Africa in the 80s. He wants that back.
Not only is Trump a criminal, he's also someone who is arguably in mental and perhaps even cognitive decline.
Yes, Biden is aging. He shuffles when he walks and forgets names and makes gaffes. But he's not incoherent. He can give us a prompter speech. Kamala Harris has passed the audition flawlessly. This has been, in many ways, a perfect campaign. For misappropriating Black vernacular for misogynistic purposes, Elon Musk is the absolute worst. They've taught people the word inflation, right? Most people who would have never used that word ever in their lives are using it now because they've been taught it.
So many of us are not safe in Donald Trump's America.
If you're mad at United Healthcare and you voted for Trump, you essentially voted for America to be run like United Healthcare.
And you think, oh yeah, they let the race lady in. Blah, affirmative action. Blah. Well, listen, let me cheer you up, okay? I got into Harvard and Yale, Vassar, and the University of Denver too, because I had a really high GPA and fantastic SAT scores.
Let me just be clear. I got into Harvard only because of affirmative action.
Excuse me. when you see it all together, when you see it all strung together like that, it really, and I know that's not like one show, that's a bunch of shows over a bunch of years. And you can see from the glow, I mean, there's a glow up. At first she had the curls, then she had, at the end of her career, she was rocking the Mark Kaye. I mean, even yesterday, I was like, what, girl, you stole my haircut. Girl, you stole, look at this. Look at, here's Joy Reid yesterday.
My show had value.
She literally stole my whole look. She's got the same microphone I have. She's got the same mic arm I have. She's got the same haircut I have. She's even wearing the navy blue shirt that I wear. Joy Reid she's ganking my entire gig here. She's stealing everything. Who wore it better, though? That's the thing. Who wears it better, though? Who wears the bald better, me or Joy Reid? Mark Kaye or Joy Reid? That's my question. That's my question. Please answer in the comments. I'm going to get to what Rachel Maddow said here in just a minute because I still can't believe it. But before I play the Rachel Maddow stuff, I do need you to subscribe to this channel. I know you love it. If it's YouTube or Rumble, wherever you happen to be. Oh, I heard on Rumble, one of the superstars of Rumble is leaving for a new job. I don't know if you heard that. So I mean, again, and I'm sad because, when one person prospers in an industry, everybody does. And Rumble has gotten a lot of eyeballs on Rumble, a lot of new patrons to Rumble, a lot of new visitors and viewers have come to Rumble because of Dan Bongino. And when he leaves, it would be bad for those people to leave Rumble because it affects everybody. A rising ship tide, all that. There's all that kind of stuff. So if you're on Rumble, please, don't go anywhere. And if you watched Dan Bongino and maybe you're peeking around or you're popping on this, just so you know, we go live every single day at noon too, and we're not going to work for the FBI. So you can continue to enjoy this show, but you have to subscribe. Just subscribe, hit like, hit share, whatever you want to do. If you're listening on a podcast, tell the podcast platform, oh yeah, I want more of this. I want more Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. I want more of that bald guy that looks like Joy Reid, or who Joy Reid looks like. I think is probably more like it. All right, so Rachel Maddow. I didn't know that Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid were so close, but I guess it makes sense, right? I guess you don't work. I guess in order to produce the kind of propaganda that these people produce, you have to be similar of mind and spirit. You have to be void of morals and common sense. You have to just have such hatred in your heart for anyone that's different than you. You have to be so woke, it like ain't no joke. And these kinds of people exist in a vacuum. And I guess if you work at MSNBC, and we'd have to ask Jen Peppermint Saki, but if you work at MSNBC, I imagine that you work in a bubble of hatred and racism and race baiting and all this other kind of stuff. And what happens when you work in a bubble? Everybody just kind of takes on the same mentality, takes on the same ideas. They're all little sponges and they're sucking off of each other. And they're just, and they're all just becoming these terrible, horrible, no good, very bad people. So Rachel Maddow, no shock, was apparently best friends with Joy Reid, the race lady. And yesterday, on her appearance on MSNBC, she talked about how sad she was to see Joy Reid go, which, makes sense, and how she wasn't happy about it. And then she accused the network heads and the chief executives in charge of NBC of being racists.
An even bigger programming change is at 7 p.m. Eastern, where Joy Reid's show, The Readout, ended tonight. And Joy is not taking a different job in the network. She is leaving the network altogether. And that is very, very, very hard to take.
For some people, for you, I guess.
I am 51 years old. I have been gainfully employed since I was 12. And I have had so many different kinds of jobs, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. But in all of the jobs I have had, in all of the years I have been alive, there is no colleague for whom I have had more affection and more respect than Joy Reid. I love everything about her. I have learned so much from her. I have so much more to learn from her. I do not want to lose her as a colleague here at MSNBC. And personally, I think it is a bad mistake to let her walk out the door.
Okay, by the way, they didn't let her walk out the door. She didn't say, I'm leaving. And they were like, okay. They were like, please get out. They opened the door and said, you're leaving now. And again, I've been there myself. I know how to, it's not, they let her walk out the door. They opened the door and they tossed her to the curb because they didn't like her. They didn't want her. She didn't print well. She wasn't doing, her ratings were bad. Who knows? She was a hateful person. Who knows? Keep in mind, MSNBC is going to get spun off from NBC because of bad ratings. Elon Musk has already toyed with the idea of purchasing the network along with Donald Trump Jr. I don't know if that's still going to be a thing. I would love for it to be a thing. I would love for some other conservative firebrand to pick it up and turn it into something decent. But again, television is kind of, television isn't what it used to be. TV news isn't what it used to be. And again, there's other ways for you to get your news, like, well, what we're doing right now. But that's when Rachel Maddow really dropped the hammer. And she said, look, not only am I going to miss Joy Reid, but I look around here and I see something horrible happening.
I'll tell you, it is also unnerving to see that on a network where we've got two non-white hosts in primetime, both of our non-white hosts in primetime are losing their shows, as is Katie Phang on the weekend. And that feels worse than bad, no matter who replaces them. That feels indefensible, and I do not defend it.
She's basically calling MSNBC a bunch of racists. I'm not going to argue with her. Although now the racism is on the other foot. I don't even know what the proper usage or term there is. But what she's talking about also is Lester Holt on NBC is leaving the network. Lester Holt leaving NBC Nightly News after a decade. NBC News anchor Lester Holt announced Monday he will step down after a decade of helming the network's evening broadcast. Holt, 65, will remain with NBC in a full-time role at Dateline, where he has been the principal anchor, yada, 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 yada. So you got Lester Holt leaving NBC. You got Joy Reid leaving the Readout. You got this other chick. I don't even know who it was. Phang? Is that what she said? I don't even know who it was. And Rachel Maddow says, this is inexcusable. It's indefensible. I will not defend this.
I'll tell you, it is also unnerving to see that on a network where we've got two non-white hosts in primetime, both of our non-white hosts in primetime are losing their shows, as is Katie Phang on the weekend. And that feels worse than bad, no matter who replaces them.
Yeah,
that feels indefensible. And I do not defend it.
Katie Phang is who that was. And, look, and I'm not going to defend Rachel Maddow, and I'm not going to claim that she's right about any of these things. But Joy Reid, one of two non-white anchors, was fired from her job. And guess who they're replacing her with? Jen Peppermint Psaki, probably the whitest person on television. Probably the white. They looked around the newsroom and they were like, all right, who's the whitest person we got? Hey, look, she's got pale skin, freckles, and red hair. She's probably, you don't get any whiter than that, huh? Psaki, get over here. we got good news for you. You are going to be taking the place of Joy Reid because we're going to fire her. Because, we can't tell you why, but Rachel Maddow will tell you. Rachel Maddow, it's fun to watch them all turn on each other. It's really, and again, I knew eventually this would happen. Once one of the dominoes falls, the rest just kind of go into place. Once the fake news realizes that they no longer can, and there's a couple of reasons for this. There's a couple of reasons why this is happening. And if you look at it across the board, you've got major players across the board who are leaving. Jim Acosta, you may remember, announced that he was leaving his post. Chuck Todd left NBC. Now it's Joy Reid. Now it's Lester Holt. And there's a couple reasons for this, because during the Biden administration, these news agencies were acting as the mouthpiece or the propaganda purveyors and the lie machines, the dishonesty, brigade of the Democrat Party. We would see, who was the roly-poly guy on CNN who hosted that horrible show and then got fired and then they rehired him again? See, I can't even remember. It looked like Humpty Dumpty. I forget. Brian Stelter. Thank you. Brian Stelter really admitted that Jen Psaki in the White House Communications Department would funnel him information. And he would say, here are the talking points today. Here's what we want you to cover. We're going to do an interview. He even one time in an interview asked her, what can we, the media, do better? What? What can we, the media, do better? How about stop groveling at the feet of the Democrat Party and the President of the United States and do your job? How about investigative journalism? How about looking into that whole Hunter Biden laptop thing instead of suppressing the information? How about not believing that those 50 lying spies who told you it was Russian disinformation, were lying to you? How about not believing them and maybe checking it out for yourself? No, Brian Stelter was like, oh, we're here to serve at the pleasure of the President of the United States. That's not the media's job at all. And for years, they got away with it. And as a result, the Joe Biden administration, through the USAID and other various organizations, would get them some money, because you need money to pay these people. You need money to keep these networks on the air. Now, Doge has come along and cut the funding. The USAID is closed. It's shut up tight. I imagine there's other grants and what do you call it? Money laundering schemes that Elon Musk and his brigade of Dozers have figured out and found out and cut out of the budget. Scott Bessent is going through the Treasury right now. All of the waste, all of the corruption, all of the payoffs, all the kickbacks, they're gone. Now the media has to survive on ad revenue. They have to sell advertising to people. They have to show that there is a return on investment for advertisers. They have to have ratings. They have to have quality content that people are actually going to watch. It's a whole new ballgame for these left-wing networks. They have no idea how to do any of that. They don't know how to produce content that people are going to want to watch on its own merit. They have no idea how to sell advertising to actual advertising agencies and to major brands who haven't been introduced to them by somebody in Biden's White House or some kind of corporate shill. They have to survive on their own. They can no longer suckle on the government teat and use your tax dollars to pay these big salaries for race baiters like Joy Reid. It's a whole new ballgame for them. And the first thing they're doing is cutting the fat. They're cutting the waste. They're looking at the people that make the most money and they're showing them the door because they realize that they're not going to be able to survive as networks unless they start acting like networks. And you can ask any of the networks on the other side of the aisle, like Newsmax, who's having a record year and is about to go public, and Fox News, who I think they paid Fox News paid $700 million in a settlement, and still is like the top grossing news network. Think about it. That's like the Jeff Bezos divorce. Jeff Bezos was the richest man in the world, gave away half of his fortune to his ex-wife, and dropped to the second richest man in the world. It's pretty rich. I mean, that dude's got a lot of money. Fox News was the same way because they know what they're doing. Newsmax, the same way because they know what they're doing. They know how to create a product that people want. They know how to reach the advertisers that need to be reached, and they know how to introduce advertisers to the people. And that's how they stay in business. The Democrat Party, they went to MSNBC, they went to CNN, and they said, talk about this stuff. Make Trump look bad. We'll give you money. That business model is gone because Donald Trump is in charge. And so is Joy Reid and Lester Holt and a bunch of other people. It's really fascinating to watch. It's really exciting to watch. Also, this whole thing with the AP, man, the AP, I love what happened with the AP yesterday in court. The AP lost bigly to Donald Trump in court yesterday. You may have heard the story that the AP, the Associated Press, they decided that they did not want to refer to the Gulf of America as the Gulf of America. They decided that even though Donald Trump wrote an executive order and published an executive order and signed an executive order claiming this is now going to be known as the Gulf of America, they didn't want to play ball. Even though President Donald Trump won the election and has all authority in the world to call it the Gulf of America, and that Doug Burgum, the Secretary of the Interior, ordered every single map and every government document to now reflect the new name, the Gulf of America. And even though Google Maps, owned by Alphabet, and Apple Maps, owned by Apple, even though they changed their name in their applications to the Gulf of America, even despite all of that, the AP was not going to do it. The AP was going to spit in the face of the administration. And Donald Trump said, okay, if you're not going to acknowledge my authority, if you're not going to acknowledge my executive orders, I'm not going to acknowledge you as a legitimate news organization, and I'm not going to give you access to me. Because here, we don't want fake news in the White House. We don't want fake news in the White House press briefing room. We don't want fake news in the Oval Office when I give my impromptu press conferences. We don't want fake news on Air Force One, for crying out loud. So if you're going to continue to be fake news, we are going to excuse you and not allow you inside. Well, the AP, did what you think any average, ordinary person would do, and they apologized. Kidding. They sued Donald Trump in court for access, claiming that they deserved access based on the reasoning that they're the AP. I don't even know. I don't even know what their argument was. I don't even know what the argument was of the AP that they deserved access to the president of the United States as a news organization. I'm a news organization. Can I sue to get access to the president of the United States? Can I sue my way into the White House? No. Can you sue your way on to Air Force One? Not last time I checked. And in fact, there was a judge, a federal judge in D.C. who ruled yesterday that no, the AP is not guaranteed access to the President of the United States. That is a right. I'm sorry, that is a privilege, not a right. And Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, was talking all about this big win for President Donald Trump and for Real News Media yesterday at the White House.
And the winning continues here at the White House every day. Today, a federal judge right here in Washington, D.C., denied the Associated Press's emergency request for a temporary restraining order to restore their privilege of returning to the White House press pool. And the judge's denial of the Associated Press's request reinforces what I said from the podium last week and what President Trump has been saying. Covering the American presidency in the most intimate and limited spaces in this White House, in the Oval Office, on the Air Force One, is a privilege. It is not a legal right. And we want all voices to have that opportunity. And that's why we've expanded the James S. Brady briefing room to invite truly legitimate, independent journalists, podcasters, and other media types into that room to cover this president with honesty and accuracy and with real mindfulness of what the American people actually care about.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm still waiting for my invitation. I filled out the form like a month ago. I filled out the online form. Kaye Saves the Republic. I'd like to come. I haven't heard yet. I haven't heard anything back yet. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. So I'm hoping that eventually, I'll get my seat in the White House press briefing room so I could ask a question. I don't know what I would ask though. I guess I would try to figure that out. But the AP does not have a right to the president. They don't have a right to the intimate places inside the White House. It's a privilege. And it's a privilege given to legitimate news organizations. And legitimate news organizations are ones that report the truth and not pretend that something is called something it's not. It's no longer the Gulf of Mexico. Sure, it had a good run, but that run is over. Donald Trump's in charge. It's now the Gulf of America. And wouldn't you know it, Jen Psaki and the White House Communications Department have decided to troll mercilessly the AP by putting up signs in the press briefing room that say Gulf of America with a large stamp of victory across either side. I don't know if these are going to be up today for the press briefing. I don't know if they were up yet. I don't think there was a press briefing yesterday, but I imagine the next time the AP or anybody walks into the press briefing room, they're going to see these big signs that say Gulf of America with victory stamped across them. And they're going to know that not only does Donald Trump fight and win, but he will take a victory lap like nobody you've ever seen before. He will beat you down and he will remind you of it every single day of your life. Incidentally, speaking of the AP and the Gulf of America, wouldn't it be fun if everybody watching right now, if everybody listening right now went to markkshop.com, purchased a Gulf of America t-shirt, hoodie, or other item, and sent it to the AP? I think that would be priceless. Get your Gulf of America t-shirt. There's ladies, V-necks. Get your hoodie. Get whatever you want. Send it to somebody at the AP, or don't. Keep it for yourself. Because let's face it, you probably would appreciate it more. They're all, fantastically designed. There's light mode, dark mode. You can have a Gulf of America t-shirt in any number of fashion colors, pink and yellow and gray and blue and other gray, all kinds of different colors. And all you have to do is go to markkshop.com, to get yours today. Speaking of Doge, were we speaking of Doge? I guess we were speaking of Donald Trump. You throwing the stuff back in people's faces. We should talk a little bit about Doge, because Doge is doing something really fantastic. They are cutting so much waste. Not only are they cutting waste, but they are getting the waste to cut itself. And this email that Elon Musk sent last weekend, the email that says, "What did you do last week?" The concept of this email was brilliant, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday. I'll refresh your memory. Elon Musk sends an email out to every single federal worker and says, "Hi, by Monday at midnight or Monday at close of business," or I don't even remember what it was, "please send 5 bullet points of accomplishments you had last week to your manager. 5 things you accomplished, just 5 bullet points. Here are 5 things I accomplished last week." That's 1 accomplishment per day, which if you're paid in any, government employee or private sector, anyone should be able to accomplish at least 1 thing every single day. And so you send that to your manager, and if you don't send an email, we're just going to take that as your resignation. So you're free to not send an email, but then you will no longer work here or in your department. And he sent that out for a couple of reasons. The first reason was he wanted to know that people were doing stuff. He wanted to see who was doing stuff. He wanted to see which people were doing the most and the best stuff so that maybe they could be promoted or utilized or given more tasks to accomplish or a raise. And then he also wanted to see which people didn't respond at all. Because, shocker, there's a lot of people in the government who are working from home that aren't actually working. There's a lot of people in government who are sitting at home not checking their emails. And if you don't respond to that email, odds are maybe you didn't check that email. And if you didn't check that email, odds are maybe you're not even working. Or maybe you're not even an actual person. Maybe you don't even exist. And that is one of the many reasons why that email was sent. Now, a couple of agencies like the FBI and the DOD and the State Department, they wrote emails back to their employees saying, hey, please disregard the Doge email. Please don't send 5 bullet points of things that you accomplished last week to your manager or to Elon Musk. You are exempt from this. And the media, of course, purveyors of fake news that they are, immediately said, uh-oh, they're taking sides. There's a battle in the Roman Empire. Elon Musk is calling the shots, but now Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel are fighting back. That wasn't it at all. And Donald Trump was asked about this yesterday at the White House, and he explained exactly why, A, the email was a fantastic idea, and B, why some parts of the government replied and said, please don't do this.
No. That was done in a friendly manner. Only things such as perhaps Marco at State Department where they have very confidential things, or the FBI where they're working on confidential things. And they don't mean that in any way combatively with Elon. They're just saying there are some people that you don't want to really have them tell you what they're working on last week. But other than that, I think everyone thought it was a pretty ingenious idea. We have to find out where these people are. Who are they? And we said, if you don't respond, we assume you're not around.
And that holds, that stands.
And you're not getting paid anymore, too. So, you know, we're doing a real job. And we just had a poll come out, I guess the Harvard poll, saying that it's massively popular what we're doing.
It is massively popular what it's doing, and it's massively effective. And it's not bad. It's not mean. It's not, what was it Lisa Murkowski called it? I think, did she say it was intimidating?
The intimidation, if you will, that deliver these 5 bullets by Monday at noon, or you lose your job. Again, if you want accountability, let's ask for accountability, but let's do that through the proper chain. What
is the proper chain for accountability? Is it not your boss says do something and you do it? Is it not your boss says, hey, what do you even do here? And you explain it. And if they like it and they understand it, then okay, you can stay. If they don't, then you leave. I mean, is that like, what are we doing here? It's like that meme that's been going around with Holly showing up at the office or showing up at Dunder Mifflin and asking Creed, what is it you do here? And he goes, what's wrong with this woman asking all these questions? That's none of her business what I do here. It actually happens to be all of our business what people are doing at the government. And it is immensely popular, as we saw yesterday from that Harvard poll that came out. And Donald Trump, he was also asked about that Harvard poll as well, in which case he said, you know, usually they hate me, but I'm honored.
Well, I was honored by it. It was a big poll, and it's usually a poll that leans on the other side of things, the other side of the world, so to speak. But the Harvard poll is a respected poll, and it has us not only leading, but leading by a lot, and leading on every single issue that we've talked about. And as I said, we've become the party of common sense. And I think that's a very important element now, common sense, because what's happening in the world and even in this country, some of the things that took place, many of them are now canceled and the rest are being canceled as we speak. But we've moved very rapidly and I think very effectively. So I was honored by that poll. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Donald Trump is saying, look, we are the party of common sense. We are leading with common sense. We are cutting out waste, fraud. And those are just, remember, his favorite things are waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, His favorite things his least favorite things are waste, fraud, and abuse. And then they become his favorite things to cut out of our lives and out of our government and out of our budget. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's cutting waste. He's cutting fraud. He's cutting abuse. And we just can't believe that so many people are against it.
The radical left or whoever it may be starts screaming about the Constitution, but it has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has to do with fairness to this country. It has to do with being ripped off. And when you read the things that all of these billions, and I mean many billions, hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on, that's all you have to do is stand up here and read them. I could stand up all day and read the kind of things where we're spending all of this money. The good news is that when you think of how rich a nation we can be when we get rid of this, you know, sometimes you'll buy a company and you'll see it was really well run. They accounted for every penny. Well, not much you can do there. You got yourself a bad deal. This one is the exact opposite. Tremendous fraud, tremendous waste. And when you think of what it is, you know, Elon uses an expression, caring. If we had people that cared, just cared a little bit when they did contracts, when they negotiated with outside vendors on behalf of the United States. That's what I'm doing now. I'm negotiating for the people of the United States. So we're doing a great job of it. I will say we found it'll be hundreds of billions of dollars of waste and fraud and abuse.
And that's something that people don't realize. Donald Trump isn't doing this to hurt you. He's doing it on your behalf. When Donald Trump puts a tariff on China or Mexico or Canada, he's not doing it because he wants you to pay more. It's because he wants you to pay less. It's because you didn't have a representative in government. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, all these other weirdos, they were representing themselves. There's a lot of people in government still representing themselves. Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. These people went to the United States Senate. They went to the United States Congress. They went to the House of Representatives. They went there because they were representing themselves and they were looking out for themselves and they were trying to game the system for themselves. That's how you have all of these representatives like Elizabeth Warren, who makes $202,000 a year, but somehow has a net worth of over $20 million. John Rutherford in Florida's District 5, don't even get me started, made $5 million as a member of the House of Representatives with a salary of what, $172,000 a year before taxes? Come on. There's no way that this happens organically. We know that it doesn't. And Donald Trump says, look, you got to run it like a company. CNN doesn't understand that. CNN had Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank on, and this guy, I forget his name, but Tom something, he used to be a representative from New Jersey. And Kevin O'Leary said, look, this is exactly what we should be doing. Elon Musk should be cutting even more.
The federal government is not a company that you take over. This may work on Shark Tank, but it's not a company that you take over and dismantle and sell for parts because you want to do it in a different way. You have to do things in accordance with the Constitution.
The smile is back. I think I know why. Kevin, what's your thought?
Federal government is fat, dripping with fat. 100 years of never being scrutinized, never been examined, never looking for any efficiencies. Finally, here's an individual that's willing to do it for free with extremely great executional skills, and people are uncomfortable. Don't worry about it. The American people want to know how much waste is evident. And I think they're getting answers, and it's not good. So, you know, Tom, I love it. You're absolutely right. But frankly, just between you and I, he's not cutting enough. You know, in the concept of private equity, when you find a broken, bankrupt company, you look at the spreadsheet, you say, okay, this is the original cut idea. You cut 20% more because it really hurts when you cut. You cut deep, you cut fast, you chop, you hack, and then you hire back because you don't want the trauma to everybody multiple times. I don't think he's doing enough. He's not cutting enough. We should cut more, 20% more. It's all fat. It's waste. There's so much waste in federal government. This is great for the American people.
Kevin, how can it be so?
Yeah, and this is where she cut. This is where she doesn't understand business. And this is something we talked about last week. In fact, I mentioned the exact same thing. Company I worked for decided to cut all the HR agents. Ironically, they fired HR. They centralized HR. They brought in like one person to do all the HR. They saved a bunch of money for a year, and then they realized, you know what, we need more HR people. We probably shouldn't have cut them all, so they hired some back. And they saved money, and they found a more efficient way to do it, and moving forward, everybody was happy. Well, except a couple people, I guess, who got fired. And Kevin O'Leary goes, that's what you do. You have to hack away And then when you're because you don't know also where all the waste and fraud and abuse is. You're going to have to get rid of you have to cut across the board. And then you look around and go, okay, we got rid of all the bad stuff. Let's start rebuilding with good stuff.
So then if it's to rehire, first of all, the number 20% just seems completely arbitrary. I don't know where you're basing that off of, other than it sounds like maybe an idea. But also, hold on, I want to hear your responses. But Kevin, it doesn't make efficiency sense to say I'm going to thrash and burn and then try to regrow everything and try to come back and figure out what I've done that was ineffective in the instance. Isn't an audit supposed to be I'm going to take an assessment and then I'm going to decide the prudent course of action? Why is it while I'm auditing, I'm getting rid of, and then I'll figure out if it was a good idea? Would that work in your business?
Yes, you can't be surgically precision. There's no way to be surgically precision in this. You have to cut more because you just don't know. There's no way to do it. Remember, we've never audited government for 100 years. Never done this before.
And we don't know where the waste and fraud and abuse is. We're learning, but we didn't know until we started cutting away. And eventually we will build back where need be. But this is how it's done. This is how business is done. This is how businesses run. This is how efficiency works. Oh, and it's not just waste, fraud, and abuse. It's not just redundant employees and lazy employees and these organizations that are just sucking up your money. It's not these ridiculous projects like transgender comic books in Peru and Iraqi Sesame Street and all the other weird stuff they were spending your money on. It's not just people who are on the Social Security rolls getting checks who are over 300 years old, or the guy who had a 90-day contract that the government was paying out for 20 years and oops, he just forgot to tell everybody while he was cashing the checks. We're not just talking about that. We're not just talking about antiquated systems where if you want to retire, you have to wait for somebody to go to an old limestone mine, pray to God that the elevator isn't broken so that your paperwork, and when we say paperwork, we mean on paper, doesn't get held up on the top floor, because apparently you can't take the stairs, and they need to get it to the right transfer case in the big warehouse underneath. And let's just hope the termites don't get to any of that stuff. Otherwise, the whole government system is going to be shot to HE double hockey sticks. That's not what we're talking about at all. What we're talking about is getting rid of waste, fraud, abuse, and also bad actors like leakers. Because if you leak information about what your government is doing, it is anti-government. It is against what the government has been designed to do. And Donald Trump's government has been designed to cut out all the waste, cut out all the fat, get rid of all the criminal illegal aliens, solidify the border, fix the economy, end the war in Ukraine, bring peace to the Middle East, among other, and for fair reciprocal trade agreements, all this stuff that Donald Trump has said, I'm going to do. And he's doing it. And anybody who leaks information or talks about information or puts any government agents' lives at risk is anti-American. And in my humble opinion, is committing treason, but is committing some kind of crime at least that should result in termination. And Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, agrees wholeheartedly and has actively sought out, found, and is in the process of I guess you would say, doing justice to, bringing justice upon these leakers.
I have found some leakers. We are continuing to get more. They will be fired. There will be consequences. And remember, when they leak information to the press in order to blow an op, they are putting law enforcement lives in jeopardy. They are risking their lives and putting their families in the position where they'll have to live without those individuals any further. So you bet we have used every tactic that we have. If you remember, we talked just last week about how I'm using polygraphs to go after and to really interview these folks. Because we are a national security agency, I have that tool I can use. Also looking at their emails, looking at their communications. And it's amazing how these bureaucrats who have an agenda to stop the work that we're doing to bring safety to America, how they will sell each other down the river if it's just to protect themselves. So don't worry, I am doing everything to find these leakers and to get rid of them so that we can do our work and our law enforcement officers and agents can do it safely.
There you go. Do the work. Let the law enforcement agents and workers do it safely. Make sure that the people who are put in charge of your safety and making sure that Donald Trump's agenda is executed are not being executed because somebody thought it would be fun to leak. the information to a group of individuals who were, who were under scrutiny or under investigation or who were being, round up by ICE agents to be deported. The agenda is the agenda, and anybody who gets in the way, it could be committing some kind of terrible, heinous crime. And that's why it's exciting to see. Oh, speaking of terrible, heinous crimes, speaking of murder, Kamala Harris was murdering the English language yesterday. Did you hear this? I don't know if you saw this Kamala Harris clip. I almost really want Kamala Harris to run for something. I've heard now that Kamala Harris is going to run for governor of California. I've heard now that Kamala Harris is going to run for president again in 2028. Or at least she's the front runner, according to some polls, right above Pete Buttigieg. And when I see these clips of Kamala Harris, it takes me back. It takes me back to just a few months ago, 6, 7, 8 months ago, when she was out giving speeches, when she was doing interviews, the couple that she did. Mostly she was hiding from them. But it takes me back to the town hall on CNN, the ridiculous things that she would do and say, the repetitiveness of her speeches, the way we would compare all of her word salads, the way we would play over and over again her weird catchphrases like unburdened by what has been. Well, she was out in California and she was asked a question about the wildfire. She was out there, because Kamala Harris, I don't know. First of all, she's a couple months too late, but she was out there and she's like, oh, the wildfire, now that the wildfires are over basically and under control, I'm going to come in and I'm going to take a look. And she was asked about what she thought and what she saw. And here's what she said.
Goes through your mind when you see this? You're here, you're now seeing it up close.
It's not only seeing it, Alex, you can smell it. You can feel it, right? So it's seeing it with our eyes, and many people have seen it. You all are covering it. But to literally be on the ground here, you can smell the smoke that was here. You can feel the toxicity, frankly, of the environment. You can feel the energy of all of the folks who are still here on the ground.
Okay, now, in all fairness, this was kind of a trick question, because the guy started by saying, what's running through your mind? And I just don't think that's not a fair thing to ask somebody. That's not a fair thing to ask somebody who doesn't have a mind. But she goes, oh, what's running through my mind? You can smell it.
Goes through your mind when you see this. You're here, you're now seeing it up close.
It's not only seeing it, Alex, you can smell it. You can feel it, right? So it's seeing it with our eyes, and many people have seen it. You all are covering it. But to literally be on the ground here, you can smell the smoke that was here. You can feel the toxicity, frankly. Of the
I can feel some toxicity for sure. I smell something. I don't know if it's smoke that I smell, but I'm smelling something.
You can smell it.
Yeah. What? Somebody's BSing her way through an answer.
You can smell it.
Yeah. I do. I hope to God, I get down on my knees every night and I'm going to pray, dear Lord, please do not let Kamala Harris's career in the spotlight be over. Please do not let her political career come to an abrupt end. Dear Lord, for the sake of me and the podcast and all the Kayetriots listening around the world who are seeking to be entertained and seeking to laugh at those who are, well, dumber than they are. Please, dear Lord, please allow Kamala Harris to remain in the public spotlight at least through 2026. And by then, hopefully I myself will be in Congress and I won't care anymore. I'll have a lot of other people. I'll have a lot of other people I can laugh at. Anyway, that's Kamala. We'll keep our tab. We'll keep a tab, by the way, on Kamala Harris and let you know any and all ridiculous things that she tends to say about, well, pretty much anything at all. Emmanuel Macron, speaking of which, was at the White House yesterday with President Donald Trump. And oh, by the way, there is a White House press briefing today. We showed you the photos. So we will, I do want to dip into the White House press briefing here in just a minute when it starts, because, well, A, I like to see who's in the new media seat that isn't me. And B, I want to see if they actually have those the Victory Gulf of America banners still up, which I imagine they will. So in the meantime, whenever that pops in, I'm going to pop in just a second, and you can hear, and again, it's Caroline Levitt. She's going to have some really interesting information, I'm sure. I'm sure she'll recap a little bit about what was going on with Emmanuel Macron in the White House. But Emmanuel Macron came and he hung out with Donald Trump. And they have this weird bro relationship. It's one of those relationships where they're kind of like bros and they kind of get along. But at the same time, they're very competitive. And both of them want to be the alpha in the room. And I imagine that Emmanuel Macron, with all his hair, back in France, with his distinguished, dark, tall, dark, and handsome looks in France. He's quite a gentleman, and the women, they go, Emmanuel Macron, you are a very attractive male. I think that he's got that alpha energy. So when he comes into the White House, where Donald Trump is like the ultimate alpha, I mean, of all the men in the United States of America, Donald Trump is like the ultimate alpha of men in the United States. And so there's this competition that and you can see it, the way they react and the way they talk about each other. It's like they're enemies, but they're frenemies, but they're bros, but they're competitors. And they touch each other a lot, and they do this thing with their hands. And to me, really, a lot of it's very similar to like I almost expect them to just start wrestling. That's exactly what I would expect. Here's what happened yesterday.
I just want to tell you a little story. So we were at the Eiffel Tower having dinner with your wonderful wife and with my wonderful wife, and we came out and he started speaking the French deal. And we didn't have an interpreter, and he was going on and on and on, and I was just nodding, yes, yes, yes. And he really sold me out, because I got back the next day and I read the papers. I said, that's not what we said. He's a smart customer, I will tell you that. That wasn't exactly what we agreed to.
Yeah, see, they do that thing where they start like, ah, ha, ha, but then neither one wants to be the first one to let go. Because if you're the first one to let go, then you lose, is what it is. So they're like grabbing a hand, they're like, ha, 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 ha. And I imagine it's almost like one of those things where I imagine Donald Trump to just punch him in the shoulder, and then Macron would go, and punch Donald in the shoulder just like a little harder. And then Donald Trump would look at him and go, this guy, and then like punch him even. And then the next thing they'd both be bruised and beaten and battered. And because that's just the kind of guys, that's what happens when you have two alpha males in the same room. By the way, Sunny Hostin on The View, she had some things she wanted to say about this back and forth between Donald Trump and Macron, and the fact that he didn't have an interpreter with it. Donald Trump not having an interpreter, that's just irresponsible. And Sunny Hostin thinks she knows why.
To your point, Sarah, I think most presidents don't sit in a room with the leader of an ally without an interpreter, especially if they don't understand the language. I think this president, unfortunately, perhaps either doesn't understand geopolitics and doesn't understand the importance of having allies and the importance of our allyship, or perhaps there is a reason why, to your point, Joy, that he is so enthralled with Russia. I don't know if it's because he thinks by getting Russia closer to the United States that perhaps they'll ice out China. I think that is a ridiculous reading of the political landscape.
He can't figure that out.
Or exactly. Or again, he just doesn't understand geopolitics in the way that a president should. But we kind of knew that before.
What if he owes Putin? Maybe he owes something to Putin.
Okay, so this is basically, let me explain what's happening here. The View is saying Donald Trump doesn't understand geopolitics and that he still owes something to Putin. What that means is they believe that the Steele dossier, which we now know was fake, we now know was fiction, we now know was bought and paid for by the Clinton Foundation, we now know was Democrat propaganda meant to get an illegal FISA warrant signed so that they could illegally spy on Donald Trump's campaign. All this stuff that happened, we now know factually that the Steele dossier was not. Donald Trump did not pay prostitutes to accompany him to the Obama suite at the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons or whatever it was in Moscow and urinate all over the bed sheets because he was angry at President Obama. That didn't happen. That was just a figment of Christopher Steele's demented, weird mind that was paid for by Hillary Clinton and her oodles of cash that she was able to collect after she and her husband left the White House. But they believe it's true. Joy Behar, or maybe he owes Putin something. Maybe Putin knows something about Donald Trump. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. They still think that all of that Russian propaganda is real. and that Vladimir Putin is still controlling the strings. And that's why Donald Trump doesn't have an interpreter when he sits down with French President Macron. It's a real interesting spin, and it's a real stretch. Like, these women must do a lot of Pilates because they can stretch like nobody I've ever seen in my entire life. But it's really interesting because I've noticed something kind of shifting in the past couple of years where the Democrats think, and you have to really think about this, the Democrats refuse to see the danger posed by China and instead harp on the dangers posed by Russia. Dangers which, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think are as threatening as the dangers posed by China. Russia has become more and more like the United States since the Cold War than it has like the USSR of old. And China has become a much bigger threat economically, militarily, geopolitically, to steal a word from Sonny Hostin. They control large portions of pretty much every major industrial country. They controlled the Panama Canal until Donald Trump got back here. They wanted to control areas around Greenland. They have interests in the Middle East. They're trying to make moves on Taiwan. And oh yeah, they're buying up all of our farmland around all of our nuclear bases and silos. So I think that's a pretty big threat, but the left refuses to see it. Maybe because they were all getting paid by China. Maybe because Joe Biden was getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from China funneled through those various shell corporations, and with 10% given to the big guy. Maybe that's the reason why. I'm not sure. But the right wing, if you will, or the conservatives in the party realize the threat of China, while the Democrats choose to ignore it and instead continue to paint Putin as the biggest threat to the United States of America. And I don't think that's true. Is Russia a threat to the United States of America? Sure. Absolutely. Is Putin going to invade the United States of America? Not on your life. Is Putin going to... We're not in the Cold War of the 80s. This is not Red Dawn. You know, Patrick Swayze's not going to have to fight off Russians who are jumping out of troop transports and parachuting into the Midwest. That's not happening. That's not going to happen. But China is sending spy balloons across our country. China is trying to shut down our trade. China is trying to buy massive swaths of the United States of America. We'll get back to this in a minute.
Everybody.
Let's take a quick listen in.
How are we today?
To the press briefing.
Good. During his inaugural address, President Trump promised that America would be a manufacturing nation once again, and liberal pundits mocked him for it. But those critics were proven wrong once again. On the heels of President Trump's Oval Office meeting with Apple CEO Tim Cook last week, Apple just announced its largest ever commitment to American jobs and industry. Okay, by the way, the infamous signs that we saw earlier that say Gulf of America victory do not appear to be in the press briefing room yet. The TV screens are there, and they have a couple of memes about Tim Cook and Donald Trump up there. They may still appear, though. I'm not saying they're not going to. In America. And the investment isn't limited to one specific region of our country. Apple teams and facilities will expand all over our country in Arizona, California, Iowa, Nevada, North Carolina, Michigan, Oregon, Texas, and Washington. With President Trump in charge, America is open for business.
It's a $500 billion
Apple CEO
investment
Tim
she's
Cook
talking
said
about.
it best in the company's announcement. We are bullish on the future of American innovation. On top of this incredible Apple announcement, President Trump already announced more than $1 trillion in pledged investments into the United States. And on another important note that the American people entrusted President Trump to fulfill, this administration's efforts to seal the border continue to prove extraordinarily successful.
Excellent.
In President Trump's first month back in office alone, illegal border crossings hit lows not seen in decades.
Down 94%.
Over the past year, while interior arrests are up 134%.
94%.
And this past
It's
Saturday,
crazy.
this is a significant statistic that I wanted to share with all of you. There were only 220 illegal border crossings on Saturday.
Whoa.
This is a 15-year low. Think about that in comparison to the amount of illegal border crossings we saw under the previous administration. Fox recently reported that a San Diego migrant shelter is closing its doors after saying they have not received new asylum-seeking families or individuals since January 20th. We all know what happened on January 20th, don't we? And yesterday, New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced that the massive Roosevelt Hotel migrant shelter in Manhattan will shut down in the next few months.
Okay, this is exciting too, by the way, because the Roosevelt Hotel was a historic hotel in New York City that the government took over for years and turned into a migrant shelter. They're now going to close it. And my only question is, are they going to turn it back into a hotel? Is anybody going to want to stay there? I mean, it's been used as a migrant shelter for years. You're going to have to gut and redo that entire thing, I would think, to draw back any business.
Adopted by the Trump administration was a significant reason for their decision to return to the countries of their origin. Overall, the American people continue to overwhelmingly give President Trump very positive remarks. Nearly every one of President Trump's policy initiatives are receiving strong majority support. And I have noted that in every briefing since Inauguration Day.
She's showing the Harvard.
81% of Americans support deporting illegal migrant criminals from our nation's interior.
This is that Harvard poll that we've all been talking about.
76% of Americans support the DOJ-led efforts of a full-scale investigation to find and eliminate fraud and waste in government expenditures. Again, this is from a Harvard-Harris poll, a very legitimate pollster. 76% of Americans support closing the border. 69% of Americans support President Trump's common sense efforts to ban men from women's sports. As you all know, we celebrated that executive order at the White House a couple of weeks ago. 65% of Americans support the president's efforts to eliminate all preferences by race in the hiring and awarding of government contracts, which is another pledge that DOJ is working hard to fulfill. And 61% of Americans, vast majority, support the president's plan for reciprocal tariffs to ensure that other countries are treating us the way we have always been treated.
Yeah.
Despite what many Democrats and media members want you to believe, the Trump agenda is not only necessary, but it is overwhelmingly popular.
Correct.
Why? Because it's driven by common sense.
All right, there you go.
And finally, as you all saw yesterday, a federal judge denied the Associated Press's emergency motion for a temporary restraining order against myself, our Deputy Chief of Staff, Taylor Budowich, and our Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, for our decision to remove the Associated Press from the White House press pool for certain and special events. The judge's ruling, upholding our decision to deny the Associated Press such privileged access, reinforces the truth. And it reiterates what I said from this podium last week when that suit was filed. Asking the President of the United States questions in limited spaces, such as the Oval Office in Air Force One, is a privilege that unfortunately has only been granted to a few. It is not a legal right for all. The Trump administration has already proven to be the most transparent ever, and this president, the most accessible in history. This is evidenced by President Trump's daily press conferences in the Oval Office, where he takes many questions from the journalists who have the honor and privilege of standing before the beautiful Resolute desk. The president and this entire White House are committed to ensuring the American people continue to receive this same level of historic transparency, access, and visibility. In fact, we want to double down and give even greater access to the American people. We want more outlets and new outlets to have a chance to take part in the press pool, to cover this administration's unprecedented achievements up close, front and center. As you all know, for decades, a group of DC-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore. I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations. Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, fear not, but we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility. Just like we added a new media seat in this briefing room, legacy media outlets who have been here for years will still participate in the pool, but new voices are going to be welcomed in as well. As part of these changes, we will continue the rotation amongst the 5 major television networks to ensure the president's remarks are heard far and wide around this world. We will add additional streaming services which reach different audiences than traditional cable and broadcast.
Oh,
this
interesting.
This is the ever-changing landscape of the media in the United States today.
Wow.
We will continue to rotate a print pooler who has the great responsibility of quickly transcribing the president's remarks and disseminating them to the rest of the world. And we will add outlets to the print pool rotation who have long been denied the privilege to partake in this experience, but are committed to covering this White House beat. We will continue to rotate a radio pooler and add other radio hosts who have been denied access, especially local radio hosts who serve as the heartbeat of our country. And we will add additional outlets and reporters who are well suited to cover the news of the day and ask substantive questions of the President of the United States, depending on the news he is making on that given day. This administration is shaking up Washington in more ways than one. That's what we were elected to do. As I have said since the first day behind this podium, it's beyond time that the White House press operation reflects the media habits of the American people in 2025, not 1925. A select group of DC-based journalists should no longer have a monopoly over the privilege of press access at the White House. All journalists, outlets, and voices deserve a seat at this highly coveted table. So by deciding which outlets make up the limited press pool on a day-to-day basis, the White House will be restoring power back to the American people who President Trump was elected to serve.
This is so exciting.
So in that note, in our new media seat today, we have Shelby Talcott, who is a White House reporter for Semaphore. In 2022, Semaphore launched as a global digital news platform with the aim of bringing meaningful innovations to the news industry. Today, they have nearly 1 million newsletter subscribers spanning 11 separate editions. With that, Shelby, I will take your questions.
I don't think that Semaphore is an independent.
One on foreign policy. Over the weekend, the president's special missions envoy, Rick Grenell, was talking about Venezuela, and he said that the president isn't someone who wants regime change. Other administration officials have made clear that they don't see Maduro as...
All right, I'm bored. No, that's interesting. So here's the big hot story. The press pool will no longer be figured out by the press pool. It's now going to be the White House press staff who's going to decide who's going to be asking the questions and sitting in the room and doing the transcripts and the radio broadcasts and all that other kind of stuff. This rotating seat, by the way, that they have for the new media, I feel like they could have 2 rotating seats, and I feel like they could double their efforts at getting independent journalists in there. Also, they don't have press briefings every single day. It's only, I think, 2 times a week, if that. So if you look at the next, year or so, it could be a very long time before they run through even a couple of dozen of different reporters. And it seems to me, too, like they're maybe not necessarily starting with truly independent people, but people who work for non-traditional media sources like Semaphore or who was it they had last week? So I guess they had the guy from Breitbart, which was fine. But anyway, this is it. Look, there's continual change in the White House. There's always going to be something new in the White House, and there's always going to be something new that Donald Trump comes up with to help affect change and to make sure that we are working toward a better America and that the people have more of a choice. And that's something that I'm really excited about. Listen, yesterday, because of technical difficulties, and I blame Dan Bongino 100% because Dan Bongino, I guess, announced on Sunday he was going to go work for the FBI. Not his fault. He's being served. He's being called to serve, and he's serving. Great guy. Wish him all the best. Excited to have him in that position as deputy director of the FBI. He's going to do an amazing job, and we should all be thankful. However, yesterday when he made his announcement on Rumble, it basically fried their servers, totally destroyed anybody else's ability to get onto Rumble. I couldn't broadcast on Rumble. Some of Dee Dockery, who was it my VA lady? Sorry, she got a lot of names, that D. She wasn't able to get on so that she could administer, but it doesn't matter because there was nothing to administer because we couldn't get on. A whole bunch of stuff. And the locals is tied right into that. So we weren't able to do the after party yesterday. But today, clearly, we are. In fact, I haven't really checked yet, but I haven't heard any complaints from anybody, but I assume we're on Rumble. Let me just double check. Hey, look at that. We're on Rumble. We have 1.4 thousand people joining us as well. To the 1.4 thousand Kayetriots who are currently watching on Rumble, and also the thousands of Kayetriots who are watching on all of our other platforms, Facebook and X and Twitch and YouTube, wherever you happen to be. In just a few minutes, we are going to take this whole shebang into our private after party. If you would like to join us, you can do so by going to Kayetriots.com. That will take you to our Rumble area where you can become a supporter, and you can join us for really one of the most exciting parts of my day. And that is the after party where we chill, where we hang. There's a couple of other stories I haven't yet gotten to that I wanted to share with you. We take questions. I give answers. There's free stickers. There's all kinds of great stuff. And it's a very, 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 very nominal membership price, $10 a month. I mean, that's like nothing. I always say $10 a month is like, you probably lose $10 a month or spend $10 a month on stupid stuff. You know, the odd soda here and there, maybe a coffee, maybe you supersize your lunch when, let's face it, you probably shouldn't anyway. You could probably scrape up $10 somewhere else and spend it on something that's really worthwhile, something that's going to keep your brain going. It's going to bring you more laughter, and it's going to be, I think, just all around good for your soul. Plus, it keeps this show going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. So join us at Kayetriots.com for the after party. For everybody else, thank you so much for joining us today. Please make sure you subscribe, like, share, set the notifications. We're not going anywhere. We are going to keep bringing you the info you need to know, the information that's required to be a good citizen and a valiant warrior and a protector of the Constitution of the United States of America. A valiant warrior and a vigilant operative who will defend the Constitution every single day. Somebody who has the knowledge and the spirit and the energy and the patriotism to fight, 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 so that you and me and the rest of us can all save the Republic. All right, let's see if I remember how to do. Oh, you're right. The after party begins in 3 minutes.